Okay. Can you hear me? I can't hear anything.
Hear me now?
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me? No.
Can you?
I can hear you, but I can't hear you.
I can't hear you at all.
Let me see. Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you.
Huh. Okay. Let me take this off.
Oh, try it now.
Can you hear me?
Computer muted for some reason.
Okay.
All right, there we go. Now we got it.
Okay.
I'm so. I have. This is my life, issue after issue, right? Like I went to my computer froze, so I was like, okay, I'll restart the computer. Then when I went to log in, the subscription needed paid, so I'm like, okay, I'll pay that. And then I couldn't get, for some reason, I wouldn't connect to Facebook. I went logged on Facebook on my other phone because I was like, at this point, I was just like, screw it, I just need to get in.
Yeah. No worries.
So, for those of you who don't know, this is Sleepy. That's his TikTok handle is Sleepy. His real name is Mario. And he wrote me a little bio to introduce him. Mario, 44 years old, born in California in East LA. He's been in gang related activities, addicted to math for 15 years. Next month, he's 15 years clean. So I'm really
Yep.
excited to hear that's really good. That's 15 years. That's huge. I didn't realize you had so much clean time.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot. It's a big accomplishment.
Definitely. I'm trying to find a blank space in my notebook. Dude, I've got so much. All right. All right. You just can. So I like to start wherever you think your story starts, right? So if you think that starts in your childhood, your addiction, wherever you think it starts, and then I take notes and I'll ask questions as we go. But some people listening on TikTok, some people listening on Facebook, people listening on YouTube. We're all around right now.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think believe my addiction has a lot to do with my childhood. I grew up in families, obviously, with the alcohol addictions, gang related, um, in and out of prison, and so on and so on. So it's where what I pretty much was born into. I grew into it, and I fought, and I continue those steps. I continue the chain. I continue living the style. Um, Went ahead and got into gang related gangs. Um, been in a lot of such activities, shootouts, been shot at, never got hit, so thankful for that. Um, Used the gun, shot at before as well. Can't really sit here and tell you if I've ever really hit nobody. I never really shot directly at anybody, and the times that I have, gun got jammed, and one time gun had no bullets. So I can't really sit here and say I've ever hit anybody. I've been stabbed before, been jumped, and with all this lifestyle, I believe everything else kind of just falls into place. Um, with everything being negative, of course. Everybody in my family was a history of alcoholics. So grandpa, father, uncles, cousins, so on. They all were alcoholics, and that's where my addiction kind of started at it. And drinking alcohol. I started smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol at a very young age. I was 13 years old when I smoked my first cigarette, and I was about 15 years old when I started drinking beer. Um, I drank alcohol for quite some time, for every day, maybe a few years. I tried marijuana along the way. Back in those days, marijuana was not my thing. I didn't like it. Um, just didn't like to feel down, or just too relaxed to me, if anything. So I continue with alcohol. Became a problem. Obviously, it built the same persons and same characters that were built around my whole family. You know, I was raised with uh, parents were very abusive to each other. My grandpa, which my mom's dad, was very verbally abusive to his daughter, which my mom. Uncles were always abusive to whatever relationship they were in. So it's kind of what I grew up in learning and knowing. So once I was very involved in alcohol
So I just
and
want to ask real quick. I know you said that like your family, that your whole family was kind of like involved in the gang and the drugging and the alcohol lifestyle. So like when you said you start like smoking at 13 and drinking at 15 and stuff, like your family let you. That's what I'm trying to get at. Is like it was
uh,
accepted.
if the question was that I do it, yeah, it was not a problem.
Right.
Um, when I started smoking cigarettes, they didn't know I was smoking cigarettes until I turned 16. But by the time I was 16, I was drinking and smoking cigarettes in my front porch with my parents being inside. And then, then yes, my mom always did have a problem. Um, my dad might have always had a problem with it, but they just never told me anything about it. At that moment, I believe my mom was already divorced with my dad when I just started smoking like in the front and not really caring pretty much, who knew and who didn't knew. Um, so yeah, it was they definitely knew about that.
When do you think your
And
parents divorced? About when did that happen?
I want to say around when I was 16, 17.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I was definitely drinking around them around 15, 16. If I was in front of my house, I was across the street, but
But
I was definitely
they knew,
drinking around.
and
Yeah,
there was
they
no
knew
just no
they
clear,
knew
no,
what was
right?
going on.
No,
Yeah,
right.
definitely. One thing I did, I mean, when I did try marijuana, I would hide that from them, and again, I didn't really like marijuana at the moment. It wasn't really my thing. So it wasn't a problem towards me. It was more like smoking cigarettes, being drunk, and always telling me like, "Oh, you're just gonna end up in the same situation as all your uncles and being in prison, being locked up, or if not dead, and so on." Right? So, and believe me, all this is true. Eventually it increased where to a point where I was getting into too many problems, getting into too
Were you
many.
still going to school at this time? Were you
I,
still going
I
to
was
school?
still going to school. Yeah, I was still going to school. I was actually uh going ditching, I mean, most of my time, but I was still enrolled in school. If I wasn't in school, I was most likely at a ditching party somewhere. So that I was enrolled in school, yes. That I was in class, most likely no. Um, so I walked out of I pretty much dropped out of high school at a very young age. I mean, I continue going to school, but I've never really paid attention or tried to earn any credits. I was just there to cause trouble. Um, I believe I was about also 17, 16, 17 when I was offered my first line of cocaine, which I was very curious about it and I tried it. Um, I really didn't feel much about it, like to a point where like I was like, oh yeah, that was so awesome, that was great. My friend came to me the next day and asked me like, "Hey, how was the thing?" I was like, "Oh, I mean, it was good. I mean, I had a good time last night. I came home and I went to sleep. I personally thought that type of powder was supposed to keep me awake, but no, it was. I mean, to me, it was whatever, bro. It was cool. Um, I think that's where my fall went through. I mean, a few more times after that, I was offered a line, never asked what it was. One of the times that I went ahead and I said, yes, I'll go ahead and let me have a line. Um, I felt great. I felt amazing. I felt like I was on top of the world. I felt like nobody can touch me. I felt like I was more powerful than probably Superman. That's the way it made me felt. And again, I had a good friend that always came to me and asked me, how was it? How was it there? That's that next day. I told when he came and he asked me how was it. I told him, man, it was the best Coke I've ever tried. I was like, man, no other Coke has ever made me feel that way, bro. Like I've been up. I haven't even slept. I still feel amazing right now. Like, and he goes, oh, bro, let me just tell you that that was not Coke. He goes, you didn't get it from me. He goes, you got it from the other guy. He goes, he actually gave you crystal meth. And I was like, oh wow. I was like, man, well, that was bomb. I told him, well, that was good. I liked it. I was like, that was pretty cool. It wasn't a problem at the moment. I mean, it was something that I didn't do every day or every weekend. It happened when it happened, and it was like that maybe for about I want to say that maybe the first 2 years. After the first 2 years, being obviously with all that trauma of parents being divorced and all that, it kind of helped with the throughout that age. It kind of helped with all that emotional pain and it was to me it was pretty hurtful the fact that they had it split up, and mom left one way, my dad left the other way. Like, hey, I was still obviously young. I was still a kid. I mean, I was still in high school, so that was pretty hurtful at the moment. Definitely some trauma that I had to go through. Um, Throughout my high school years, I've gotten obviously into a high school relationship that lasted about 2 years, 2.5 years or so. Along the relationship, I was also already getting high, but along the relationship, she ended up being with one of what friends that I knew. So that was another hurtful moment. Obviously, at that moment, my mom was already had left, and I had went through all that. So I
So
think
when
at
your
that point,
parents
I was.
split up, you stayed with your dad?
I'm sorry.
You said your mom left, so, like, when your parents split up, you stayed with your dad?
Yes, they split. Yes, I stood with my dad. Yes, me and my brother stood with my dad. My sister was already living on her own, but my mom took my younger brother. So I stood behind. We stood with my dad. We've been here. We've been at my dad's ever since. Um, but yeah, I mean that part of the trauma was that happened to me at that moment. I kind of didn't believe in women anymore. Like, how come my mom leave my dad, and how come this relationship I was with, like, ended up being with somebody that I knew. So I didn't care about women anymore. I pushed them away. I didn't care what had happened to them. I didn't even care how I treated them. I didn't have any type of how could I say it? I couldn't trust them. I just
Okay,
couldn't trust. I couldn't trust women at the moment anymore. And
that's
and
fair.
and at the same time, the same thing went for guys, because obviously I knew this guy. So I was like, I can't trust people anymore. I told myself. I think that was one of my biggest things where I started getting more into the drug, because at that moment I knew I wasn't feeling that anger too much. I was mad. I could do something about it, but I wasn't gonna sit down and cry about it. So that's how the drug made me feel. I was powerful. I could do whatever I wanted. You did me dirty, I'm gonna do you back dirty. That was my mentality at the moment. Um, so yeah, I went ahead and I continued using more, because I obviously it was helping me out. Along life, we lost a close aunt to our family. Um, when she passed away, it was really hard for me to cry, and not because I didn't want to. I felt the sadness in me. I was just high. It was just so much in me that I couldn't cry. I was just like, wow, like, I have it in here, and it hurts so much that they're gone, but this drug doesn't even let me show my emotions. It makes me numb my emotions, which, obviously, again, it was something good for me. I didn't want to hurt. I didn't want to be in pain. I already knew pain. I didn't want pain. So I started even using more. At some point, I started using every single day. Out of my whole 14 years, I think I used every day for about 9 years. Um, throughout that whole time, obviously, I was selling drugs. At some point, I sold drugs to make money. I became to a point where I was just selling drugs just to get high. Um, um, Sold them just to get high, obviously, and then once I was so deep into it, um, I would sit there and I would tell myself like, yeah, you're about to pretty much finish your life with this. This is just pretty much your last of your last. It doesn't know, you don't know when. I don't know how. I mean, at what time or what, but it's just me and you, me and the pipe, me and Crystal, all till whenever I'm done in this world. That's pretty much what I told myself. That's pretty much what mentality, what I had at the moment. Um, I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff, and some of it I regret. Some of it I try not to let it get to me. I have a lot of friends that unfortunately had a peer pressure into using in order for me to make money, in order for me to continue getting high. Um, I have a lot of friends that even if it was me that started them, that they're longer here, but they're just not mentally here. You know, they're just the drug just even if they're not using, they're just not mentally right anymore, you know. So I try to tell myself, I try to live with that moment, telling myself, most people have a choice, and I had a choice. I I get the same thing from from the guy that came and introduced me to even sniffing my first line of cocaine. He still comes to me and tells me I feel bad, and I'm like, don't feel bad. I was curious about it. It wasn't if it wasn't you. I was already living in that lifestyle. I was already born into gangs, into alcohol. So if it wasn't from you, one way or another, I was gonna land on it because I was curious about it. I wanted to use it. I wanted to try whatever I could from out there. And meth is not the only thing I tried. I can hear you. I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear me? Um. See, so at that point, see, meth. It's not the only drug I tried. I meth is what I liked, what I loved. But I did try other stuff. I tried obviously cocaine. I tried crack, um, meth. I tried speed, which is almost the same thing, just dirtier ingredients from what I hear. I tried, I believe, acid one time. I didn't like it, and that's pretty much it. All those other drugs, I kind of didn't want to continue using them because at that moment, I really knew I had a problem. And I really told myself, like, dude, you continue using more, like, I can't even afford the problem I have. You continue using, I was like, dude, you don't even know what could happen. Um, I obviously couldn't hold a job throughout my hopes, me being dirty. I'll be at a job for about a week, 2 weeks, leave it, go ahead and use my money to get high, get a good amount of, to go ahead and sell it while I continue getting high. Um,
Where were you living like through all this? Were you like still living with your dad or like just
Still
couch
living at my
surfing?
dad's.
Okay.
So I was living here, but I wasn't. I
Yeah.
can I can say that I always had a roof to come lay my head over. Um, I was gone most of the time. I was hardly even home. I There's times I won't even be home for 3 days to a week. Um, but for the most part, yes, I did have a home at my dad's home to always come and lay my head at. Um, that I was here most of the time. No, I wasn't. I was here probably about 20% of that time. Um,
Did you ever use with your dad?
no. You know what? My dad never used any type of
Just
drug.
alcohol?
just alcohol. Just alcohol. Not even, from what I know, not even marijuana. I've heard stories, but yeah, it was just alcohol from what I know what my dad used.
Did he know
Um,
that you were using harder drugs?
I'm sure he did. There was times where he would be in his days and come in my room and pretty much grab everything he could and broke it in front of my door, knowing that those are, my pookie pipes, the weed pipes, whatever. I'd be like, hey, why'd you break my pipes, man? Those are just to burn oils, so my room can smell good. I used to tell him, and that's the only thing I could come up with, at the moment. Like, hey, those are oil burners. What's wrong with you? But yes, he knew. I was never a heavy kid. I was always pretty, like skinny, but at some point, you're able to see the bones in your cheeks, the bones popping out of everywhere. So he definitely knew. Everything was pretty much obvious of how I isolated myself. At some point in my life, where when I stopped being involved in gang related activities, um, I kind of told myself like, okay, I'm done. I need to chill out. I need to stop. I need to relax myself. Like snap out of it. You need to walk away from everything and like rebuild yourself. Which I walked away and I tried to rebuild myself, but I couldn't walk away from the drug. That's the only thing that I couldn't walk away at the moment. I did walk away from being in gang related activities. Stop hanging around every day. But I think throughout that time, I started getting high more often. I was home more often, but I was very isolated. I didn't want to come out of my room. Whatever I did was throughout the nighttime. I would stay up all night doing whatever I needed to do, whether I had to go out or be here. Um, That's so, you guys want to know how I got high. I was never able to hold a job, so um, I never came to a point where selling stuff for my parents. I'm not gonna say I never did it, but it did come across my path. Most of the time, I sold all of my stuff. At some point, I had no TV. All I had was my mattress on the floor. Um, uh I couldn't hold a job, so my main thing was to rob people, break into houses, come up on whatever I could to be able to support the habit that I had created for myself. um yeah, I mean, throughout the whole time that I funny thing that it's throughout the whole time when I stopped being into gang related activities, and mind you, while all this gang related activities and me being high, I was always in the streets. When I stopped being into gang related activities, I isolated myself, but I couldn't stop getting high. But at that moment, I started seeing jail more often. I've never really seen jail while I was doing crazy stuff out there, getting shot at or shooting back or getting stabbed, whatever. Never even seen a cop was able to always walk away and everything. Um, so when I stopped, once I stopped that, and then I isolated myself and all that. That's when I started getting busted, going into jail a lot. Um, that pretty much kind of stressed me out more. So I think that's when I started even getting out and be like, no, I can't deal with this. I need more. It was a stress. It was pretty stressful being in there, not being able to get high. However, I was in there either getting high. I was like, no, I'll push it through until I get out of here. But at some point in my life, I kind of realized that. Um, Again, I came to a point being in and out of jail so much, that I was very used to being in jail, very comfortable at some point, and I think that's when I kind of snapped into reality one time where I was like, dude, I'm too comfortable in this place. Um, Once I got too comfortable in jail cell, I think that's when I started telling myself, like, dude, if I don't stop now, like I need to figure out like something that works for me. I'm okay. I kept telling myself I'm okay while I'm in here, not using. Doesn't mean that I don't want it, but I can fight it when I'm in here. Like, why can't I do the same while I'm out there? So I kept telling myself that, but once you're out, it's not the same story. It's all a different story after that. Um, you're back with your same friends. You're still back with the same crowd. Even if you try to walk away, like there's always gonna be somebody you're hanging around, and if they're still using, it's not a good thing. It's not a good combination. It's not a good combination to be in friend and relationships if you're both using, or even friendships if you're both using. It's just not a good combination, especially if you want to get clean.
Yeah. So how
Um,
did you finally do it? What was the final straw for you?
so that was the final straw. I was in jail. I was too comfortable. I was waking up too comfortable. I mean, I had spent tell you I spent getting locked up from when I was, I think, 18, 19 years old, and the last time I got busted, I was about 20, 27, turned 28 in there. I turned 28 in there, came out, and I haven't been back ever since. By the way,
Awesome.
it was March 10th of 2010 that I got out. Um, so that moment was the last straw. That's the time where I had told myself, I'm tired of this life. I'm tired of being locked up. I'm tired of people telling me when to shower, when to eat, when to use the restroom. I'm tired of being broke. I'm tired of not having even my own toilet paper
Yeah.
for for
So
for
I
for what
know
my dad always used to say. Like, no, this kid doesn't even have toilet paper to wipe his own fucking ass. It's just useless.
so I
But
know like with meth being your primary drug of choice, there's not a lot of resources for people to get clean off of meth. So how did you do it? Just did it? You just stayed
I
clean?
just did it. I mean, yes, it did. I just did it. I did go through so when I got out, well, that moment when I had told myself, like, dude, that's it. I actually got up. I went to the phone. I called my mom. I told her, like, look, at that moment might have been somewhere, and it was already past my birthday, and I think it was past New Year's. It was in January, if I'm correct. And that moment came to me, and again I was in there, and I called my mom and I told her, look, I'm gonna get out in March. I was like, and whatever it is that you want me to try out, I got nothing to lose. Like, I literally have nothing to lose. So I'll try
Yes,
it out.
surrendered. Yeah.
Yeah, so I told myself, let's try it out. Whatever, let's go. So she sent me to two type of programs. One of them was a religion program. One of them was a life coaching program.
Are
When I
these
did
like
the,
inpatient programs, outpatient programs?
yeah, it was more like a life transformational program.
Okay.
Um, so my religion program, that I went to, I am Catholic, and what I learned in my religion program is I learned how to forgive myself. I learned that none of the trauma I had went through was my fault. So I learned how to forgive myself, and that was a good thing. I still didn't even know how to love myself at that moment. To tell you the truth, I still didn't even care. To tell you the truth, I was in there
So
wanting to get out and get high.
I'm just curious, the Catholic program that you went to was that like a drug program, like about
No,
drugs? Oh, okay.
nope,
All right.
no. None of the programs I did had anything to do with drug counseling.
Just working on yourself. I like that. I
Yes,
haven't done any like official programs
yeah.
like that, but like that's what I just worked on myself. I just was like, I can't live like this anymore. And like,
Hmm.
how can I be a better person? You know what I mean? Better mom, wife,
Yeah,
partner, friend, all the things. And so that's kind of what I did too. And I love that, I love that's really cool because a lot of times you hear people that work the programs, then they say that that's the some of the people, not all the people, say that that's the only way. And now here we are, proof that it's not. So that's awesome.
yeah. No, I never worked the program The only time I walked into a meeting or a narcotics anonymous meeting was because court ordered me to.
Mm-hmm.
I was in there for as many days as they wanted me to, and I was urged to get out of there. I personally, I never got anything from being in there. Like at that moment, at that moment. Um, So yeah, once I was done with the Catholic retreat and I learned how to forgive myself, again I walked out of this Catholic retreat and I still got high. I felt one more time. My mom put me in another program, which this was a life transformation. Or this program was pretty much just to focus on me and my problem, my trauma, and my lifestyle. So the funny thing about this whole thing was that there was a bunch of funny parts about this whole program. First part was that we had a few rules to follow. The rules was to try to stay sober throughout the whole program. It was a few steps, but the first was 3 days, the next was 4 days, and so on and so on. Second was not to get involved with anybody in that program. They're all mixed boys, girls at all age, from 18 to whatever age you can think of. Some of them were even 17 years old. So I lived the program, and throughout that program, I eventually learned how to love myself. So I already knew how to forgive myself. Now I'm learning how to love myself. And now I'm learning that I'm capable of loving myself. So since I'm able to keep loving myself, like dude, I'm capable of returning that. You know. Um, I did break the rules while we were there because I was still getting high while I was there. But I was still learning, obviously, whatever was coming to me. Because I was locked in there for practically all day long. So I was only able to get high in the morning while I was going over there, and I was not coming home until really late at night. Um, so that was one of my rules that I broke. Second rule that I broke was that I got involved with one of the coaches from the group. Along my second step of the program, and I think the second step, I believe, if I'm correct, was the 4 day step day. So I think it was like on my Saturday, so second to last day, we had again we had what do they call it? It was like more like an exercise. We had an exercise. We would do a lot of exercises, to be able to work on ourselves. So since I've been high, whatever, this new coach that came in there, she was new, obviously, from the rest of the days that we were there. And she sat there and she knew everybody's name. She probably was in the background studying all of us throughout the whole time. She knew everybody's name, and she got there and she did one exercise, right? Once she was done with that exercise, she sat everybody down and she asked me how I was. She focused on me. I told her I'm okay. She asked everybody else around me, has anybody went up to Mario and asked him how he's doing? And in reality, yes, there has been one or two person that came up to me and asked me what I was, how I was doing. I kept telling them okay. The fact of the matter was that I was coming down. I was already up for 2 days, so they were able to see that in my face. Um, that coach stood right there in front, and once she asked everybody, like, has anybody asked them, and everybody, and the two people that asked, she stared, and she stand there and she stared at me, and she told the whole group, she goes, I guarantee you, if I test him right now, he's gonna come out dirty. And I stood shocked. I was like, nobody ever confronted
Well,
me
you
like that.
on your shit? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
while I was on my shit, nobody ever confronted me the way she did in front of everybody. So I was like, dude, I'm coming down.
can't handle this. Yeah, like
I can't. Yeah, I don't know what to do here. Like she's right. I told myself, like the whole time that I was in these programs, I
did
knew
you
my
get
attitude.
angry? I would have got
Yes,
angry. Yes, I
I
would have
knew I knew my
in my
attitude, and I try to control it as much as possible. Um, So at that moment, I really kind of like I was like, okay, she's pushing me, and I'm like, dude, I'm in my second day of not sleeping. I was like, dude, I'm hell of grouchy right now. So but again, I continue fighting the whole thing and everything, and she ends up coming up with an exercise, and she gets everybody up, and I don't want to say too much about these whole program things because if somebody's willing to go try it, like I'm in California. I'm not. I'm not sure if they're in the East Coast or not, but I can find out. But if anybody in California or out here is willing to try it out, or whatever, get at me. I could get you guys to this program. They're in Spanish and in English, and that I can guarantee that you'll get something out of it. Um, that moment when she got everybody up to do an exercise, the coaches got it was like a boxing ring. We got four corners, and each four of them were holding the rope. We were all in the middle, and she said, blind your eyes, cover your eyes. Everybody had their eyes covered. You have one job to do, which is get on the other side of that rope. You cannot go under the rope, you cannot go over the rope, and you cannot cut the rope, but you have to get to the other side of the rope. So start walking and start figuring it out. That's what I did. I don't know if anybody out there because we were all blindfolded, but I did bump into people as I was walking in that circle. I believe it was like half an hour, 40 minutes when we were still walking. Nobody I'm not gonna say nobody. I wasn't able to find a way out of there. I kept my hand on that rope and walked around to see if there was a way out. And I couldn't figure it out. There was no way out. I'm not quite sure how long it was, but it was quite a little while. At some point, the coach says, if anybody needs help to get out of there, raise your hand. I raised my hand. At that point, I was like, dude, I've already walked around here. Like, what the hell am I going to do, right? I already walked around here. Like, how am I going to get out? So I raised my hand. Somebody grabbed me and pulled me out. Somebody just grabbed me and pulled
Oh
me out.
shit, that's so
So,
cool.
so when they grabbed me, I believe there were still other people in there because I was still blindfolded and I was still standing outside. So I'm assuming by the time most of them were already out, by the time most of them asked for help, because I believe some of them, even after the lady asked for help, I told you if you need help, raise your hand. I believe there was
Right.
still many people there
Oh yeah.
that they were trying to figure it
That
out.
don't need
They were
help.
trying to
Yeah.
figure, yeah, like, no, I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna figure this out. When everything was done and she sat us down, she pretty much approached the team. She goes, "You guys want to know what's so crazy and what's so funny?" She goes, "When I asked who needed help to get out of here," he goes, "Mario was the first one to raise his hand." He goes, "This problem that you're living, this addiction that you're living," he goes, "you can't do it by yourself. You need help."
Love that.
And I'm like, fuck, dude, like, you're right. You're
Yes.
so fucking right. I told myself, like, dude, like, you're right. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what to do. Like, you're right. I need help. And I've been trying to do this by myself for years. I've been talking to myself. I've been going to church and talking to myself to God, sitting there by myself. I'm not going to church. I just sit when nobody's there. I go and sit there. Um, there's times where I was so going crazy that I would call hotlines. I'm like, "Yeah, let me try this hotline now. Hey man, I feel like getting high. Okay, blah, 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 okay, cool. 10 minutes later, I'm gonna go get high. I needed help, and that's something that she pointed out to me. And I said, I cannot do this by myself. So at that point, I was like, okay, I have hella knowledge in my head. I can do this. I could do this. I walked out of there. I believe it was March, January, March, June, July, August, September. I believe it was like somewhere around September or October of 2010. When all that had happened, which it comes down to my second rule that I had broke from this program. Me being involved with somebody from one of the coaches from this program. Um, by the way, I'm married to her for 15 years by now today. So when we walked away, I was still using
Was
from
she the one
September,
that
October.
called you out in on your shit?
Yeah, no, no, no. She's
Oh,
that was the the coach. She was the staff of the coach. Like she was
Okay.
the staff. Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
Not the coach. She was the staff. Um, so she was there to help out on whatever the coach needed for us to do. You know. Um, so again, this was that moment when she told me like you need help. You know, you can't do this by yourself. Um, it was again around maybe late September, early October. Um, around that time, around October, from October till March. So that was still about October, November, December, January, February, March. About 6 months that I still used. And those were the most craziest, violent, drunk, and high moments that I pretty much went down through when I told myself, like, dude, I need help. I need help, and I know it, and it's already been pointed out to me. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and I told myself, this is it. You told yourself this before, but you need to grab them. You need to do this. I went into the room. I looked at my wife, my girlfriend at the moment, and I told her like I'm done. I broke down. I told her I'm done. I'm completely done. I'm tired of this already. Well, like y'all know, next month, March 26th, will be my 15 years since I had told her that I was actually done with it, and that I actually walked away from it for the first time in those 15 years.
Wow, that is such a great story. I'm really glad we did this. There was like some,
Yeah.
like, the universe was trying to work against us. I think that, the enemy didn't want you to tell your story here today, but this
Yeah.
was amazing. So, great. So what is life? I just real quick, we have about 5 minutes. I want you to tell me, what does your life look like today? So you're
Well,
married to this woman for 15 years.
definitely
You
yes.
obviously put up with your shit for the first couple years, your addiction still, right? And
Yes. Yes.
did she use as well or no?
No.
Okay.
No, she never used, and one of the things that was why I stopped was because I was like, no, she looks like she's tempted. And if I
Oh,
start her, there's no ending for us. You know,
right.
I already started people. There's not gonna be no endings if I start her. So that's one other reason why I was like, no, this is not gonna happen.
So you're married. Do you have
Ever
children?
since then, yes. Ever since then, we we were boyfriend girlfriend for about going on 10 years. We got married back in 2019. We've been married for about going on 7 years. So we've been together going on 16 years total. I'm able to hold the job. I was able to hold the job. I started from moving cars in the car wash to now having my commercial license. I'm a truck driver. Um, so we're working right now. She's going through school, and we're climbing the ladder that has no ending. We're gonna keep going, and our goal is to get to the top, and if we can keep climbing, we're gonna get there somehow, some way.
I love this story. I'm so happy. This was a great story, Mario. Thank you so
Of
much.
course. No, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, and for letting me share my story again. This was my first time doing this, and I enjoyed it. So thank you guys for having me. And if I'm gonna sit here and say like what kind of advice for you that I have for anybody out there is like forgive yourself. Believe in yourself, love yourself, and everything else comes right after. Comes in. You love yourself to the fullest, and you're gonna see what it feels to not only love yourself but to give love back.
Yes. This was so good. Thank you so much. I'm going to close up. I
Of
will
course.
send you a copy of this once I get it edited and all of the things.
Awesome.
So give me a couple of days, but I'll get this to you,
Of
and
course.
it'll be posted
Awesome.
on like my Facebook and all of that as well. So thank you so much for this. This was
Of
amazing.
course. Thank you for having me.
Congratulations
Thank
too.
you. Of course. Thank you. Of course. Thank you. Congrats to